After the much anticipated conclusion of the Dark Knight trilogy, Warner Brothers had only one place to go, and that was to reboot Superman. But when this film was made, they weren't too sure if this was going to be a standalone film or the beginning of something new. Written by David S. Goyer and Zack Snyder, who was brought in to direct the project to see a modernization of the beloved caped superhero, Superman.
I have no people.
The plot begins with a lengthy introduction of the destruction of Krypton, Superman's birth home, where the Kryptonians have used up much of their resources and struggle to give birth to new children. Jor-El and his wife, Laura Van, I never knew her name until now, and man, it's dumb. However, they have secretly given birth to a boy, whom they built a ship so he can escape the collapse of Krypton and hopefully live a full life compared to the other Kryptonian children. This act is considered a betrayal by the Kryptonian general, Zod. Zod confronts Jor-El, which leads to an altercation before Superman's baby ship flies off, and Zod cheats Jor-El in combat, killing him. The events lead to Krypton's penultimate destruction, in which the government's last act is sending Zod and his insurgents to a special prison called the Phantom Zone, instead of trying anything else to save their planet. Laura cries alone as she watches her world implode upon itself. This takes roughly over the first 20 minutes of the film before we jump to the mid-future when adult Clark is a fisherman struggling to keep himself incognito. This of course never works out for the guy because he always has to save someone. This eventually leads him to drifting away into Antarctica, where he discovers an alien ship along with a nosy reporter, Lois Lane. This story gets confusing in only the sense that the middle of this film is non-linear in its sequences of telling a young adult Clark trying to discover who he is, with the rest taking place when he's a child growing up with his adoptive parents on a farm in Smallville. Eventually, after some forced trauma thanks to Kevin Costner's freak tornado death, and the arrival of Zod and the remaining Kryptonians on Earth looking to terraform the planet to better suit their needs. If you haven't seen this film, which is near impossible at this point unless you're young, you'd know that there's some intense fighting between the Kryptonians and Superman. Let's talk about the two big guys in this movie, General Zod and Superman. Superman is played by Henry Cavill, who up to this point in his career has done lead roles in smaller films, but he does very well as Clark and Kal-El. The only wish I'd have here is that we'd got to see more of him as a reporter instead of waiting till the end when he gets his job. As for his outfit, I like the lack of the red underpants and the nice mesh of fabric. It's almost like designer Under Armour. That dark blue looks honestly better than previous attempts that go with a lighter shade. Almost all of Superman's abilities are shown off in this film, from flying so fast he's breaking the sound barriers to his laser eyes melting away everything. He's also an angry man, most likely due to not knowing who he is and what his purpose is. It might also have to do with his dad dying from the tornado he could have easily stopped. That might weigh heavily on him. Clark also has zero friends in this movie. He never really laughs or smiles. It's a very serious take on the beloved superhero.
I will find him!
Michael Shannon portrays a modern General Zod, who, I have to be honest, I didn't know much about because I only watched the first Superman with Christopher Reeves, and the failed relaunch of Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. Most of my exposure to Supes was through the animated Justice League, and that's a totally different conversation. So meeting Zod was very interesting to me, and to see that through his birthright to lead the armies of Krypton to help protect and further prosper his people in the universe, Zod's wrath comes from the heart. He also comes in two different fits, one where he's wearing his Kryptonian armor, and it's kinda sick, and where he takes it off. It's a similar material to Kal-El's mesh. Before Zod's imprisonment in the Phantom Zone, he tries to start a coup against the leaders and scientists of Krypton because he knew the truth. They were all going to die. Once Zod and his gang are free from their jail cells, they make it clear to all of humanity and Superman that they want their home and their lives back at the cost of humanity. The themes of this film include self-worth, pressed on by both Jonathan Kent and Jor-El, for Superman to find his place in this world amongst humans, but this lends itself to a much cooler topic, the existence of extraterrestrials. It's aliens, and they are a threat to humanity. Zod has a very creepy moment where his ship hovers over the Earth's atmosphere to convey a white noise warning of impending danger, unless the citizens of the world hand over Superman. This leads Supes to have regular conversations with the military military who are also trying to comprehend this new threat. When all the peace talks fail, the invasion begins with Zod and his team retrofitting one of the Phantom Zone engines, building what they call the World Engine. I know, crazy unique naming convention here, which are two different pieces that move to opposite sides of the planet and begin a downpour of seismic activity along with devastating shockwaves. The purpose of this machine is to rebuild the surface of planets to better suit the needs of Kryptonians. Here, they seem to just cause massive damage to Metropolis. So the big issue is the length of this film, clocking in at about 2.5 hours, and it takes way too long for Soups to stop pulling punches. On the mean streets of the peaceful Kansas farming town simply known as Smallville, the US military tries to gun down the Kryptonian intruders, but they soon discover the Kryptonians are way stronger than any modern man-built war machine. So Soups jumps in to prevent casualties and damages. He does not succeed at this for one bit, but the movie doesn't want to focus on this fact. Instead, we'll relegate it to the sequel.
You are weak.
When Superman and the other Kryptonians hit, it's the closest we'll ever get to live-action anime in Hollywood. I know someone's working on a live-action Naruto, but I have no faith. None. When these two factions hit each other, they go flying away, turning buildings into rubble and smashing cars like soda cans. I mean, it gets crazier because later Zod just crashes his ship right into the heart of Metropolis before unleashing the World Engine on top of them, along with his 1v1 battle with Soups, which takes him across the whole city, destroying everything. I forgot how bad the damage was until I rewatched this again, and now the beginning of the sequel makes a lot more sense to me. One last thing to mention, and this is a spoiler, but the conclusion to Zod and Superman's fight comes down to Superman getting Zod in a nasty headlock. When Zod decides to use his laser vision to try and kill an innocent family, Clark begs him to stop, but Zod won't, so Superman snaps his neck. This had me for a doozy. In DC, as I understood it, our heroes don't kill. That's why the Joker's always running around Gotham, because Bats refuses to put the clown down. So for Zack Snyder to just change their meaning and stance about violence was very shocking. From here on forward, the characters of the DCEU will be killing their opponents, which feels like a major middle finger to the original creators and writers of the DC universe. Upsetting the hardcore fans from the start is never a good way to introduce yourself to any passionate group. Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, the first DCEU outing, is a 3 out of 5 stars from me. Hold on. Here's why. Yes, he made some very interesting changes to the characters. We are also only introduced to Lois Lane, but we're missing a lot of more important characters to Clark's life. I don't know, like Jimmy Olsen and f***ing Lex Luthor, but this entry will always be a rather interesting one. The one where Hollywood got weird and wanted everything to be gritty and dark because that's how serious this genre of cinema is. When I look at the disjointed storytelling that happens in the middle of the film, I originally thought it was to help ease the pace of the film, so it's not a paint-by-numbers hero's journey. But now I'm starting to think the script was actually trying to replicate Batman Begins. It is also important to note that because of the large box office pull this film had, Warner Brothers decided to let Snyder be the point guard for their newest endeavor, a cinematic universe with DC characters. So yes, the DCU spawns from this, but only by greed. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'm super excited about this, not only because we'll get to hopefully see the reboot of the DCEU, simply titled the DCU, but getting to rewatch these movies, I'm starting to understand that this franchise almost had no chance of catching up with Disney's MCU. Do you guys like this movie? Is Henry Cavill your favorite Superman?